of the Democratic Party.
We have an outstanding panel to discuss this. In Philadelphia, Michael Smerconish, syndicated talk radio host, best-selling author. His new book is Morning Drive, Things I Wished I Knew Before I Started Talking. Good title, good cover, funny cover. Paul Begala is in Washington, the Democratic strategist, CNN political contributor. In San Francisco, our old friend Dana Perino served as White House press secretary for President George W. Bush. And in Boston, David Gergen, CNN senior political analyst, editor-at-large, U.S. News. Spend a couple of moments first with Michael, first because of his book, but most important as well because of the Arlen Specter. You're a friend of Arlen Specter's, a supporter. Are you surprised?
All of the above, and for 3 decades. No, I'm not surprised. Arlen Specter, it's a huge blow to the Republican Party, Larry. The Republican Party, as he stated, has drifted further and further to the right. He's been a man without a country. He's often lamented to me that folks remember fondly the early 80s as the era of this rebirth of conservatism. But Arlen Specter, Senator Specter, would tell you that was also a time when there were a lot of moderates in the United States Senate. Now you could fit them all in a phone booth.
He runs for re-election as a Democrat. Are the odds in his favor?
The odds are in his favor. He's going to be the presumptive Democratic nominee. I would expect the field to clear out. I'll tell you something interesting to keep your eye on. There's a lot of chatter today about how Pat Toomey is the guy who drove him out of the party. I don't think Toomey will be the nominee for the Republicans. Keep your eye on Tom Ridge, because Tom Ridge could be drafted, and then what a battle that would be.
And Ridge is considered more a moderate, too, isn't he?
Well, that's the irony. I mean, Ridge is a guy who, in my opinion, should have been the vice presidential candidate for the Republican Party. But again, one of those litmus tests got in the way. In his case, it was abortion. And so he was deemed unacceptable at that level, and it went to Sarah Palin instead. The Republican Party's got problems, and that's what the book is all about. It's time for the party to moderate and grow that tent.
Your new book points that out and saying that one of the things that has led to this dismay, if you'd call it that, has been cable TV pundits and talk radio hosts, yourself included, correct?
Yeah, the world in which I travel, which creates all this crosstalk. You've got to have a liberal, you've got to have a conservative, everybody barking each other, and then I think the elected officials emulate what they see on TV. But what I argue, Larry, is that the only people that I meet who see the world entirely through conservative eyes or through liberal eyes are those who are on talk radio or in cable television, because in my day-to-day existence, it's a mixed bag.
Paul Begala, has he got a point?
I think Michael has a terrific point. And I think what's happened is, just like the Democratic Party in the 70s and the 80s drifted way too far out of the mainstream, and frankly took Bill Clinton and Al Gore and Dick Gephardt and others to bring us back to the center, now you're having the same problem with the Republican Party. The most important thing I think Senator Specter said today that struck me was that he quoted Ronald Reagan right back to them. President Reagan, of course, started out as an FDR liberal. He was a union president and, of course, wound up being a Goldwater conservative. But he said, I didn't leave the Democratic Party left me. Well, today, Arlen Specter said that in reverse to the Republicans. I think that's an enormous problem for Republicans all across the country. When they lose moderates, they lose Arlen Specter, they cannot be a majority party.
Dana, I want you to look at something. How angry are Republicans over the Specter defection? Listen to what RNC Chairman Michael Steele told CNN earlier today, and then we'll have you comment.
Okay.
For the senator to effectively flip the bird back to Senator Cornyn and the Republican Senate leadership, the team that has stood by him, who went to the bat for him in 2004 to save his hide, to me is not only disrespectful, it's just downright rude. I'm sure his mama didn't raise him that way.
Dana?
Well, that certainly is a colorful way to describe it, and not the way that I necessarily would have. Look, I've been a Republican for all my life, and I have always felt very comfortable in the party, and I love it because there are so many different types of people that are part of the Republican Party. And so, look, I think we need to be very clear about something here. This wasn't about Arlen Specter because he really cares about the Democratic Party. He was very candid that he knew from his pollsters that he was going to lose the race if he stayed in it as a Republican. And so he's made a personal political calculation, and you know, that's his right. I had the pleasure to get to know him for a while, but I think the Democrats ought to be careful what they wish for here. They might have 60 seats, but they don't have 60 votes. He's very wily, and I don't know if they're going to get everything that they wish for when it comes to this new seat.
We'll get David Gergen's thoughts right after this.
Working on Carl's signature move was not going well. We threw the 6 guns at him. The Matador. Hey! Ha-ha! Hot potato. Wow! Yeah, yeah! The blur. The spray. The wounded unicorn. Nothing was working. Let's try the worm.
Oh, dude.
Then we were eating Subway sandwiches, and that was it.
He's been doing it ever since.
Nothing fuels Carl Edwards like a sweet onion chicken teriyaki. Customized with veggies like black olives and green peppers. The flavor he wants, the fuel he needs.
Subway. Eat fresh.
This allergy season, get relief for nasal symptoms and your wallet with Astepro, a prescription antihistamine spray that goes right to the site of nasal allergy symptoms to relieve sneezing, itchy runny nose, and congestion. Go to Astepro.com to learn about a valuable discount card.
If you're allergic to Astepro, Astelin, or Azolastine, don't use it. Also avoid alcohol, sedatives, operating machinery, and driving. Side effects may include unusual taste, nosebleeds, headache, fatigue, and sleepiness.
Ask your doctor about Astepro.
We're back. David Gergen. According to Rush Limbaugh, a lot of Republicans wish Senator Specter would take John McCain and his daughter Meghan with him as he exits the GOP. Do you think that more defections are coming? Do you think Olympia Stowe might go, or Susan Collins?
I don't think there's any evidence there will be more defections, Larry, but I do think that that kind of Rush Limbaugh response, Mr. Steele's response, indicates the sort of the bitterness among some conservatives. And yet, one has to remember that when Ronald Reagan tried to build a majority party and came very close to doing that, he erected a big tent. He welcomed into the Republican Party people who did not disagree with him on all of his conservative positions. And the Democrats did go into eclipse, as Paul Begala said. But what they did, the Democrats did, was they started going out. Rahm Emanuel is at the leadership of this, trying to recruit moderates in the South and elsewhere to run as Democrats, and it helped to build up this majority. The conservatives, by contrast, the Club of Growth and others, have said if you're not pure enough, if you're too moderate, we're going to run somebody against you in a Republican primary, and we're going to take you down. And that's what almost happened to Arlen Specter when he ran for re-election 5 years ago. He only won the Republican primary by 1 point. The polls this time around showed him losing the Republican primary by 20 points against somebody who running against him, Mr. Toomey from the right. Now, the Republicans are going to have to make a choice. If they want to be a big majority party, then they're going to have to welcome moderates. If they want to be a small conservative party and go into the wilderness, then they can continue trying to take the Arlen Specters out.
Back with the full panel right after this. Don't go away.
This is America. And no matter how, no matter where, no matter what, we keep moving forward.
Who's the rain?
Roger that.
No rain, no rainbows.
Could you tell us what's going on?
Yeah, the cake is en route, the tulips just arrived, and the groom is...
He's getting cold feet.
I'm okay. No, I'm not.
Look, we gotta go now. The light's perfect.
I need the stunt groom now. What's a stunt groom?
Jackpot.
Get work done now. Nextel Direct Connect with GPS tracking. Only on the Now Network.
Why are smart investors moving all their money to Scottrade?
$7 won't buy 2 lattes or a few gallons of gas. But with Scottrade, I can trade as many shares as I want, and it's still just $7.
I was paying high fees to my broker. And for what? Higher returns? Please. He was the one getting higher returns from me. Bye-bye, expensive broker. Hello, Scottrade.
We're here for you.
Turn a good deal you find online into a great deal. Bank of America introduces Added Up. Earn up to 20% cash back on your online purchases through the Added Up website at over 270 participating retailers. It's only for people who have Bank of America credit and check cards. Register yours today at bankofamerica.com/addedup and turn a good deal into a great deal with Bank of America.
Tomorrow night, rate the president, Congress, and state leaders. Tell us who made the grade in the first 100 days. The CNN National Report Card tomorrow night, 7 Eastern. Sponsored by ExxonMobil.
Michael Smerconish, author of Morning Drive. How should President Obama feel about this?
Elated. I mean, it's a feather in his cap on day 100. I mean, it's another sign of the momentum that he's built. The 69% approval numbers now borne out by the fact that a prominent Republican wants to join his team as opposed to staying in a party that currently is a party of too small of a tent. You know, Larry, 21%, that's the number. 21% of the American people surveyed by the Washington Post now identify themselves as a Republican. I mean, that's an appalling number. It's a 25-year low.
All right, Paul Begala, do they run things now? Is it all in Obama's court?
Well,
60 in the Senate? Is it insurmountable?
Oh, no. I think Dana Perino makes a very good point. Arlen Specter was an independent Republican. He will be an independent Democrat. I don't think 60 is as magic as maybe some pundits do because these lines are more fluid. But the longer-term problem they have is the one that Michael points out. My dear friend Mark Shields, who's also David Gergen's old running buddy, has a wonderful phrase. He says there's two kinds of political parties, just like two kinds of churches. Those who hunt down heretics and those who seek out converts. Well, Barack Obama's out there seeking out converts every day, right? And the Republicans are hunting down heretics. You only have a 97% conservative rating. We're going to run a primary against you. That is a recipe for a smaller and smaller and purer party, but it's a stone loser.
Dana, can the radical right hurt your party?
Well, I think just as Paul and David were saying, that the parties, every once in a while, they go through periods where they have to figure out where they're going to go. We're in a period like that right now. It wasn't going to be solved in 100 days, and it will just take a little bit longer. Look, I don't think that it's a bad thing to have conservative philosophies as part of this Big Tent. And what I hear people saying is that the party has to be just moderate. I don't think that that's true. I think that we need to have the Big Tent, like we've had, and which is the reason I've been a part of the party for so long. And I think that they will come back. It's just going to take a little bit of time. I don't feel pulled in any one direction or another. I just feel like I can be myself, and that's been the greatest thing about being a Republican.
Frankly, David, you're a political expert, an extraordinary pundit, if I may say so. Were you surprised by the Specter announcement?
I was very surprised. I wasn't close to it anywhere as close to it as Michael was. But yes, I was very surprised. But let me just say a couple of things. Dana, you know, the idea of the Big Tent is not that it should become a moderate party. It's going to remain a center-right party. It is rather that moderates who are Republicans feel welcome in the party, and the people in the Northeast, which are getting cleaned out, feel welcome. But the second point is, I think Barack Obama deserves a lot of credit for what happened today. It was his campaign in 2008 that helped to bring over 200,000 Republicans out of the Republican registration over to the Democratic side. That's what set this up, Larry. He drained a lot of those Republicans out of the party, and it made it much more difficult for Specter to win in his own party in the primary. So in many ways, this is a reflection of what Obama tried throughout his campaign, that was to expand the electorate on the Democratic side. And today, you know, on the eve of the 100th day, he got this gift, which I think he planted the seeds for this. Today came the harvest.
Michael, is Pennsylvania now a Democratic state?
I think finally we should admit that it is. Since 1988, it's been carried by Democratic candidates for president. Everybody thinks that it's in play. I never understood why the McCain campaign focused all of its energy here. Here I was living here, hosting 2 radio shows here, and wondering, you know, what could they know as outsiders that I don't see? And in the end, it wasn't in the cards. You'd have to say it's a Democratic state at this point.
Paul Begala, what's going to happen in Minnesota with the Franken thing?
Well, actually, I was up there not long ago and saw Al, and I also talked to his lawyers recently. The appeal will now go to the Minnesota Supreme Court in June. That'll take a couple of weeks. The lawyers, of course, I talked to Franken's lawyers, they're very confident they will win, and he's won at every level so far. And then the interesting question will be, will the governor fulfill his duty after the Supreme Court rules, if they rule for Franken, and certify the election? The governor, Tim Pawlenty, is a Republican. He will be under enormous pressure not to, but the law requires him to certify it. And the Franken people are ready to go back to court and sue the governor if he won't certify the election after the Supreme Court. So I think Franken won't be seated until late June.
Dana, have you heard from your old boss?
Yeah, we get a chance to talk every once in a while, and I'm going to get to see him this week as well.
How's he doing?
I think he's doing well, but I'm anxious to see him and see it from my own eyes.
He's going to speak with President Clinton, right? The same event.
Yes, I don't know how often they speak. They had a good relationship over the last 8 years where they struck up, good phone conversations. I know President Bush would pick up the phone and call him, and sometimes those days when you wouldn't necessarily get a phone call, like when when Hillary Clinton, when the primary was finally decided for Barack Obama, I remember President Bush noting that he gave a call to Bill Clinton that day just to see how his friend was doing, and so. I think that this again shows that I think this Arlen Specter decision was much more of a personal political decision than it was about the party in general. I'm not saying that doesn't mean that we don't have some work to do in our party, and we'll work through those issues, but I don't think that the Democrats should kid themselves that this was such a big gift to them. I think that it will prove to be not so much a benefit as just another challenge. Look, I hand it to them that they were able to get this one. I just don't think that there's going to be additional ones. But if there are, that's fine too, and our party will come back stronger.
Onward.
People have written the obituary before, and it's not proven out.
Thanks to all of you very much. The latest in the Craigslist killer case with a person hot on the trail. That's ahead. Stick around.
Performance now is all about logic. That some cars cost as much as $1,500 to maintain is one thing. That others cost even more is quite another. That a BMW costs you nothing